Okay, so today I'm going to be reviewing this book, Game Changer by Neal Shusterman. Something I'm trying to do with this channel is try and go back to a point where I review all of the books that I read. Part of the reason why I want to do this is because I don't feel like I've been doing enough reviews lately. Part of the reason why I cut them out was because I felt like reviews might have been a little bit boring for some of you, but it's something that I want to bring back because I feel like I'm now not reviewing enough. But also, with my monthly wraps, I don't feel like I have enough time to go into full detail about the book. So I think it would just be a bit easier if I just review every book that I read, and then I can just do a quick little side comment in the monthly wrap-ups and say, if you want to check out the full review, you can, where I get more time to spend on it. So, with that little introduction out the way, let's get right on to reviewing this book, Game Changer by Neal Shusterman. If you have not seen my reviews before, I split them up into two sections, a spoiler-free and spoiler section. We start off with the spoiler-free section. In case you want to learn a little bit about the book, but you haven't read it yet and you're trying to decide if it's the right book for you, then that's why we start there. Then I go deeper into the spoiler section, so we can talk about spoilery things over there if you have read the book. But let's get right into the specific details, the stats that you might want to know about this book. So Game Changer is written by Neal Shusterman. It is a YA sci-fi. So a young adult sci-fi. I ended up giving this book, I gave this book 5 stars, and I really enjoyed every single moment that I spent with it. So I'm going to get into the spoiler-free review. First of all, I'm going to tell you a bit about the premise. I'm going to read the blurb that it has on the back, and then I might comment a little bit about what the blurb says, considering I've now read it, to let you guys know if the blurb is misleading or if it is absolutely accurate. So let's take a look at the blurb on the back of the book in 3, 2, 1, go. Ash is used to taking hits for his high school football team, but then those hits start pushing him through a succession of universes, almost but not really like his own. As small shifts in reality become significant shifts in Ash's own identity, he starts to question the world he thought he knew, as well as the ones he finds himself catapulted into. For better or worse, the one thing Ash knows is that he's got to find a way to put everything back. I think this is a perfect premise for the book without giving away too much. We have Ash, who is a footballer. For those of you who live all around the world, this is American football. I live in Australia, so that's why I'm saying it's American football. But yeah, he's an American footballer, and as with his position that he is in, don't judge me, I'm not a fan of football in any country. I don't like soccer, I don't like Australian football, I'm not into American football. It's just not my sport at all. If it's tennis, I can tell you about it, but football, I just can't. But what I can say is that the protagonist that we are following is part of a high school football team, and where he is positioned on the field, he's in a situation where he will get, bumped and, potentially bruised and stuff along the way, because American football is a very violent sport. But anyway, when we first start following Ash, we get to know a little bit about his world and how life is going for him. Then then the very next time he has a game, he's in this football game and he receives a slight concussion, and that concussion knocks him into another world that the blurb describes so accurately. It says, a universe almost but not really like his own. And I think that's absolutely right. All of these universes, so jumping the gun here, every time that Ash ends up playing a game, football, American football game, every time he plays a game, he ends up experiencing a concussion of some kind, and when he experiences that concussion, that's when he ends up being thrust into another universe. All of the universes that he is thrown into, they are like 90% similar to the world that he grew up in, but there's just some changes here and there. Sometimes they're incredibly significant, and sometimes they're not. And the final line of the blurb saying, for better or worse, the one thing Ash knows is that he's got to find a way to put everything back. Yeah, absolutely. So he starts finding out things as he goes into all these different types of or slight different types of universes compared to his own. And that's the one thing that he does realize is he needs to find a way to put everything back together and get back to the universe that he originally started off in. So that's the best I can say without giving away too many in-depth spoilers. Now, I've done some research on this book to see what other people think of it and see where I kind of stand, because again, I gave this book 5 stars. I thought it was absolutely amazing, but I wanted to see what everyone else thought. And the majority of reviewers, at least on Goodreads, which is where I get my information from, and also where I do my reviews, are saying that they didn't like the book. And I wanted to talk a little bit about why they didn't like the book in this video, but also keeping that in a very spoiler-free way. That there are issues that come up in each universe that our protagonist ends up going into, and these are just issues that could crop up in everyday life. To give you an example, it could be racism, and yeah, that's an issue. So it's an issue that happens that he ends up dealing with in a universe, for example, and other things as well. Violence is an issue, so he might deal with violence in a world. Anything you can think of that's an issue, there are issues that come up in each world that really do seem to highlight things for Ash that either he knew about but was very neutral upon and would make a decision about where he lies with that now, or it would just be there to create some sort of awareness for Ash. The problem that a lot of people seem to be having, at least from the reviews that I read on Goodreads, is that Neal Shusterman, in their mind, the author of this book, did not go far enough when it came to those issues. Now, I have read books where I felt that the author didn't go far enough with a certain topic, but at the same time, there is a certain criterion list that I go through when I consider how far an author should be going into a certain topic or not. If we are dealing with a non-fiction book and these issues are the point of the book, then definitely I feel like the author should, go quite in depth into discussing whatever it is. But in this case, it's a YA sci-fi. It's a sci-fi. It's not a book about, human issues. It's a sci-fi. So it's a sci-fi fictional book. So to me, I just don't, and this is just personal opinion, but I don't feel that these issues that people have are warranted because it's a fictional book. So, that's just my thought. I thought this was a lot of fun. Again, I'm not a fan of any type of football, but there isn't a lot of football that's played throughout the story, so I could deal with when that happened, but I was intrigued by this book because of the universe traveling. That was my thought. I thought he was going to freely travel, but he gets knocked into them. The universal aspects of the book, and I really appreciated our protagonist going into different universes, and whatever he was able to gain and walk away from that universe with, I felt was just a great lesson for him to learn. So I absolutely love this book. I cannot put it down at all. Do I think that there are some cons in this book? I think there are some, but I also think that this book goes above and beyond with the pros that it has, that I still can't dock any stars, because the cons that are in this book are few and far between, and they're so minor and minute that there's really no point me getting too upset about them. But yeah, here's my suggestion to you. Let's try and wrap up this spoiler-free section of the video, shall we? My suggestion to you is, if you interested, whether you've read this or this kind of trope before or not, if you're interested in multi-dimensional experiences in books in that trope at all, then I think you'll love this book, because the multi-dimensional aspects of the book, I think Neal Shusterman did it really, really well. So yeah, I definitely recommend it. It's definitely going to become one of my favorite books so far that I've read in 2021, because I've had some books that have been okay, I've had some books that I've been really disappointed with, but this one, I couldn't back away from the 5 stars I gave it. I thought it was really, really good. So yeah, I highly recommend it, but I did want to make that point that some people feel that Neal Shusterman didn't go into his issues deeply enough, and so as in like physical reality issues that we have in his fictional book enough. If that is an issue for you, then do be mindful of that. But if you look at it like I do and say it's a fictional book, whatever information we get, I'm fine with it, then yeah, you might like it. But if you love multidimensional travel, or if you're interested in the multidimensional travel trope, then I highly recommend it. I think you'll have a lot of fun. I definitely did. Alright, now I'm going to go into the spoiler section. Spoiler, spoiler, spoiler. We are now in the spoiler section. So, if you haven't read this book, you've been warned, because I'm jumping into spoilers right now. I really appreciated every different universe that our protagonist went into, where he and his brother were a lot closer, because as we know from his original universe, he and his brother are not close at all, his younger brother. But the more we travel through the universes, the more he and his brother are just getting closer and closer and closer as siblings, and I just really appreciated that. Let's hit the red scandal button point of the book, shall we, and jump right into the issues with racism and the issues with I don't know if we want to say homosexuality or whatever, because I'm kind of confused. But we'll get to that one second. Let's talk about racism first. In at least one of the universes, it could have been more because I wasn't paying so much focused attention on what Neal Shusterman was doing. I was just too lost in the book itself. But in at least one of the universes, Neal Shusterman has a world that he's created where people of darker skin are treated absolutely horribly in the current day and age. I never really looked at it as, okay, now that Neal Shusterman has mentioned racism, he needs to stand on a soapbox and write pages and pages and pages and pages and pages about the inequality. So for me, I just more looked at it as, okay, that's how it is in this universe, and how's he going to deal with it? Ash learned a lesson from it. I'm good, I'm happy to move on to the next universe. But I understand that there are people out there who will probably take any book, whether it's fictional or not, where a hot button topic is brought up and expect that there is going to be a lot written about it. So I did say earlier that a big part of the reason why I don't consider it to be a massive issue for me is because this is a YA sci-fi book. If it were a YA contemporary, or if it was a non-fiction book, I would have a completely different opinion. Because we're dealing with multiple universes here, it's definitely not a contemporary book. Because for those of you who don't know, contemporary books are books that are set in our world. It's just, it's everyday life kind of setting. Where sci-fi is all about, technology and robots, AI, all that kind of stuff. It's very, very much surreal to our current reality. So for me, because it's a sci-fi, I'm happy to just experience whatever Neal Shusterman's getting me to experience. But had it been a contemporary book that was set up in a way that it dealt with real and raw emotions that our protagonist is really trying to get through, and this is a major theme to the book, then I might have had an issue. While Ash learns a ton of lessons, and while the theme of the book quite possibly could be Ash learning lessons, it isn't one or two lessons that he's learning multiple lessons. So for me, I feel the goal of this book is for Ash to learn those lessons rather than Ash being forcedly having to experience all this stuff being shoved down his throat for pages upon pages upon pages upon pages. I personally just don't find it necessary. As far as the whole scene where he ends up being in a relationship with, I read this as one of the last books that I read in April, guys, so I'm trying to think back. When he's in that relationship with the tutor guy, I actually loved that. I loved it so much because when I read a book that is not an LGBTIQ plus specific book, anytime an LGBTIQ plus something happens in a book, it makes me really, really happy. So it came so completely out of left field for me. And there were people who have reviewed this book on Goodreads who did have issues with that as well. I'm not going to name names. I'm not going to put up specific quotes for you guys, but if you want to check it out, feel free to do so. But there were people who were having a lot of issues with Ash being in a relationship with a guy. Again, I can't really say, is he gay, is he bi, because it's really hard to tell. But in this particular universe, he's in a relationship with a guy. That's one of the minor changes happening in that particular universe. And not only did I have no issues with that at all, but I actually enjoyed how flipped everything was, considering that Ash seemed, to me at least, to be straight in every other universe except for that one. So I really did appreciate that. I'm just remembering the friend, the new friend that he had in other universes who he didn't know in his original one, and I've forgotten the guy's name. But anyway, I loved that character and how supportive he was of Ash. And then I loved at the end how the tutor guy ended up being with that guy. Oh my gosh, filled me with all the good feels from this book. I loved Ash traveling into each different dimension, and I couldn't help but think, you know, what are we going to come into now, you know? I really, really enjoyed that. As far as the beings that were meant to be watching over Ash while he was going through this, and he kind of named them all similar names, like for example Nick, Nicky, you know, whatever it was that he did. Ed, that's right, Ed with one D, Ed with two Ds, Eddie, you know, like, anyway, I didn't appreciate that personally, but that was more just me, because I feel like individualistic names would have made it easier to tell each one apart. And when we have Ash just saying, oh, this must be Ed with two Ds because he's being very reasonable, where Ed with one D usually isn't. If it was three different names like Max, John, and Paul, it would have been a lot easier to associate the personality with the name than by keeping them all similar, which it doesn't end up mattering anyway, because as Ash says in the book, I'm just naming them the Eddies because I don't know their actual names. I loved that friend, the girl who was in that relationship with that guy that everyone thought was an abuser, that one. I loved her because she's the first time that we see someone who's with Ash who's in on what's going on. And regardless of what universe Ash ends up in after the first time they communicate, she's always the one going to him, going, okay, what changed? What's different about this world? What do we need to do? And it's like, oh my gosh, love her. As I said earlier, I ended up giving this book 5 stars because I really did enjoy it. The best Shusterman book that I've read so far. I think even though I gave Scythe, book 1, the Archivist Scythe series, 5 stars, I enjoyed Game Changer more than I enjoyed Scythe. So I just really loved this, and if Neal Shusterman comes out with anything that is like this, if he writes a book number 2, or if he has a companion book or something where someone else travels through multiple dimensions, I think I'll love that. So we'll see how we go. But I absolutely enjoyed it and I highly recommend this book. But if you have read this book, let me know what you thought in the comments below. No issues at all if you completely disagree with me. Maybe you gave this book 1 star, or maybe you gave it 3 stars, or whatever it is. Agree or disagree, let me know what you thought in the comments below. If you end up borrowing or purchasing or whatever this book and want to read it based on my recommendation, please let me know in the comments below. I'd love to chat with you guys before you read it and then after you're done. I think that'll be a whole lot of fun. But anyway, I gave this book 5 stars and I really enjoyed it. So that's where I'm going to leave it, letting you guys go with peace, blessings, and so much love. I post videos every Tuesday. No, I don't. I post videos every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and I'll see you again soon. Mwah. Thank you so much for watching, and happy reading!